Melee Fundamentals for Improvement by KoDoRiN. Are you lost in how to improve in Melee? One of the biggest mistakes you can make when improving in anything, Melee included, is wasting your improvement time on things that quite frankly don't matter. What I mean by this is not having the right framework in how the game works, your innate capabilities like your reaction time, and practicing things wrong. This guide is primarily biased toward Marth's examples, but can easily be modified to be relevant for all other characters. The ordering, in my opinion, is the most impactful fundamental that is the most straightforward way to improve and win in any given Melee game. There are two main ways to lose a game in Melee. The first way of losing that I think most people are fine with is when you've been thoroughly outplayed in many aspects so that it feels honest in that regard. The second, and main way people actually lose in Melee, is feeling like your opponent barely did anything to outplay you, but they reversaled you out of your combos, chump-checked you, you reacted to something that's inhumanly possible, etc. The main goal of this guide is to outline certain fundamentals in Melee that are necessary prerequisites to force your opponent to actually outplay you, and describe the endgame goal of becoming the best Melee player possible. Keep in mind that this guide is strictly in-game fundamentals. Obviously, it's possible that you are held back because of mindset, how well you're taking care of yourself, controller issues, etc. But out-of-game factors are outside the scope of this guide. If given enough interest, perhaps I can talk about that in the future sometime. Fundamental number 1. Knowledge check plus consistent and optimized execution. Being tall enough to ride the roller coaster. Knowledge check. Knowledge is power. In order to understand literally anything going on, the very first thing you must attain is knowledge. Especially for an inexperienced player, it's paramount that you go out of your way to understand mechanics that don't make sense to you. Referencing outside knowledge plus other experienced players can help, and utilizing calculation and Uncle Punch labbing, fundamental number 6, can greatly help when on your own. Melee is incredibly deep and complex, so much so that not even I can say that I understand everything about this game. However, I can do my best to categorize as much as possible the mechanics that you should go out of your way to understand for yourself and your opponent's character. Movement mechanics, things like wave dash, waveland, dash dance, drift, running cancel, foxtrot, shield drop, ECB, etc. Hitbox mechanics. You'll want to know frame data of moves, range, auto-cancel windows, fastfall timings, etc. Combo mechanics. Hit stun, hit lag, ports, percent ranges, platforms, etc. Ledge mechanics. Invincibility, ledge dash, cliff weight, over 100% getup, etc. Defensive mechanics. These are what make Melee, Melee. DI, ASDI, AMSA ticking, slide off, double jump buffer, shield stun, etc. Recovery mechanics. Angling, length, lag, wall tech, air dodge, wall jump, etc. Character quirks. Some mechanics have character-based exceptions. Hurtbox, fall speed, weight, unique traits like float, parrying, etc. These are relevant mechanics that I would consider necessary to learn in order to understand what's going on. While it's impossible to know everything from the get-go, having an open mind to ask questions about what you don't know and seeking answers is key to obtaining knowledge. While you don't always have to know the exact numbers and reasoning why such mechanics even exist, it's paramount that you at least understand how the relevant mechanics work. How you know you understand is by being able to apply your knowledge effectively, which is much more useful than reciting numbers. Consistent rhythm. Being able to have consistent, optimized movement is the first requirement to actually keep up with your opponent. If you have doubts about your execution, this is a necessary prerequisite in order to improve. And to have consistent execution, you must have a consistent rhythm developed with your execution strings. You should have at least 95% consistent execution strings at the bare minimum. You can do this by relying on your rhythm and technique. You should be able to consistently perform most execution strings with your eyes closed if you're relying on rhythm and precision. If you struggle with performing the execution, break it down into simpler components and focus on the basics. Once the basics are mastered, you can bring it together with more complex strings. Consistent practice is important to build firm muscle memory. Melee's buffer system is extremely punishing, so optimizing a technique to be at least 1 frame late is acceptable. We will discuss practice more in depth under Fundamental Number 6, Uncle Punch and Labbing. Categorizing specific execution strings. There are universal timings that generally will be transferable across all matchups. These are your quintessential practice timings and will always be relevant. Grounded movement, wave dash, dash length, running cancel, dash back out of crouch. Aerial drift, short hop, full hop, fast fall, edge cancel. Platform wave land and shield drops. Shuffle, various heights and timings. Late, rising, mid, platform variants. Analog inputs, instant up tilt, slight turnaround, walk, etc. Specific moves/techniques, pivot grab, auto cancel fast fall nair, short hop instant up air, etc. Character unique tools like Peach Float, Yoshi's double jump, etc. Ledge dash, invincible aerials from ledge, example Marth's Fair from ledge. Categorizing character-specific execution. Some timings are unique and designed for X character specifically, and won't be as transferable to other matchups. Still, you must allocate some time to practicing against that character's unique timing. Think of grab follow-ups, crouch cancel / acting out of specific moves, hit lag, ledge play / edge guards. Armada Shine training on Uncle Punch is a good start for training against Fox's recovery. Wave dash out of shield / shield drop from blocking a specific move. Any other labbed scenario. You must adjust using a heavy / light feeling whenever strings are inconsistent / slow / fast whenever your rhythm feels off. You must also explore optimal techniques to achieve consistency and optimization. Example 1. Flicking the X or Y button downwards as opposed to quickly releasing is usually a much better technique for short hop consistency. Example 2. To achieve perfect drift doing a retreating, rising, double fair, drifting left, clawing is required. If you have execution issues, an opponent better than you with execution will simply outspeed you. You will also give free openings, such as missing a wave dash, accidentally full hopping, etc., resulting in the opponent not needing to outplay you at all. Bonus points if missing your execution results in an SD. If you also lack the knowledge required for a matchup from certain mechanics and frame data, you will give your opponent even more free openings that shouldn't have worked had you possessed the right knowledge necessary to win. Fundamental number 2. Reaction and decision points for execution and threat range. Knowing where to land your hit. Have you ever practiced jump cancel grab in solo practice with high consistency, but then missed it a ton when it mattered? While having good rhythm with your execution is a prerequisite, that alone is not enough to have consistent tech skill in a real match. Knowing where you are placing your reactions is the other half of ensuring that your tech skill is consistent. These are reaction points. Reaction points are the basis of your neutral game, as they turn endless permutations into few concrete outcomes. Reactions and decisions are essentially synonymous in this context. Whether you realize it or not, you are reacting to a stimulus in order to make a decision, which will typically, at minimum, take around 15 frames, plus deciding what move to use, which takes X frames. Note that it is possible to react without making a decision, but a decision always precedes a reaction point 15 frames before. Execution reaction points. Knowing where to place your reactions properly can inform you what type of rhythm is appropriate for your general movement, increasing the consistency of your tech skill, especially in a real match. If the execution string takes under 15 frames of lag, you must react before the string even starts to be efficient overall. This is why developing a rhythm for your execution is required from fundamental number 1. If you try to react to moves that are too fast, you will briefly stand there, making your overall tech skill efficiency slow. If the execution string takes over 15 frames, then you must find the frame where there are around 15 frames of lag left, so you don't compromise by reacting too early. If you try to react to moves that are too slow, with a reaction point that's too early, then your inputs will be too fast, resulting in the move not coming out at all. Melee has an unforgivable buffer system, in a sense that it barely exists at all, which is why it's okay to be around 1 frame late for consistency, described in Fundamental Number 1. So in terms of placing your reactions in regards to tech skill, it can increase your consistency in doing JC grabs. However, this is not the full picture yet. Positional reaction points. Positioning of where you place your reaction points can determine how effective your reaction points are. By retreating, you are creating space and making more things reactable, but you are not making many threats. Direct mix-ups from your opponent, if they hard approach, are often reactable due to the additional distance they are covering. But if the opponent commits more mildly, you likely cannot punish it and are stuck in positional disadvantage. By maintaining your space, no space is created, and you cannot react as reliably as defending because the opponent doesn't have to take additional distance. You are engaging in a direct mix-up if your opponent is doing a direct approach, but you are less prone to manipulation. If the opponent retreats, then you can take advantage of this by approaching, better than if you were retreating. By approaching, you are deleting space, and most things are unreactable due to the additional distance you need to cover. You are most likely engaging in a direct mix-up, most reliable when your opponents are hard retreating or maintaining space. If both players engage in a similar type of positioning, it will most likely result in a tie, also known as positional stalemate, such as when both players overshoot and they end up crossing each other up. Some characters are better at doing certain positional mix-ups than others. Fundamental Number 5 regarding unique character traits will discuss this further. Similar principles also apply to vertical positions, although in terms of giving up space when grounded, moving horizontally functions similarly to retreating. It's relative to the opponent at the end of the day. Reacting in neutral. How do you know what to react to in the neutral game? The most immediate answer is that you must react to imminent threats incoming, and the most ideal answer is something that is humanly reactable to reliably cover every time. This involves threat ranges and frame data. Threat range is the effective range of a given move. The range of the move has several factors of the character's speed, range/frame data of the move, and intricacies regarding the move. No meaningful interactions can be played if both opponents are outside their furthest threat range. Unless you have a projectile/game state that incentivizes this, you must close the distance. For example, Marth lacks a projectile, and must always close the distance to meaningfully interact with his opponent. First, identify what threat ranges your opponent can possibly attack with, and if the attack is reactable or non-reactable. Another key calculation component is whether you are approaching, maintaining space, or giving up space. You are required to react distinctly in 15 frames, the average human reaction time, plus X frame data/distance covered beforehand. The most ideal use case of reacting in neutral is reacting to guaranteed X frames of lag from the reaction point. However, you will not always be granted this level of luxury, especially against better opponents who utilize non-committal movement, making it necessary to react to X frames of possible lag from the reaction point, where you are making a prediction that they will be in lag, but will sometimes fail if the opponent accordingly manipulates. You can also react to unreactable sequences, which the sequence is faster than our normal reaction time, and or the context, which is impossible to cover, guaranteed. The only reason you would react to something unreactable is because of the possible lag the opponent commits to after their unreactable sequence. Unfortunately, listing what is always guaranteed, possible, or non-reactable is highly context-dependent, but these variables are generally used to calculate what you should be reacting to. X frames of character speed plus X frames the move/sequence takes, X frames to close the distance, plus X frames of cooldown. This is a key formula to assess what is at least possibly reactable in any given situation. Refer to Fundamental Number 6 for precise calculation methods, and Fundamental Number 5 for playing mix-ups. An important prerequisite when it comes to reacting is that you want to reduce the novelty factor when it comes to reacting to any given stimulus. If you've never seen a certain stimulus before, your mind will naturally lag processing the stimulus and will naturally be more than 15 frames of reaction time. In order to eliminate the processing part of reaction time, be familiar with the stimulus as much as possible by playing, practicing, and analyzing. Familiarity over time, by simply reacting to the stimulus repeatedly, will naturally elucidate your true reaction time. This is where experienced players have a huge edge over non-experienced players. Next, identify the overall frame data of your character and moves you want to use to go against the opponent's threat range. Determine what would be guaranteed, possible, and unreactable with how you proceed playing out the interaction with your 15 frames plus X frame data / distance covered baseline. Let's consider an example. Fox's running shine is a frame 1 move, but to enter run typically takes 15 frames. Applying 1 frame leniency, technically it's 13 frames, but being 1 frame early / late in that regard results in a missed running shine completely. If Fox wants to close additional distance, he will need to compensate with X frames of distance. Let's hypothetically say 3 frames. This will take 19 frames to possibly complete. It is only possible because Fox can cancel any of his sequences at any point during his dash. If Marth wants to react for his running shine with a grab, certain conditions need to be met. Pivot grab takes 9 frames to come out, 1 frame leniency. 15 frames of reaction time plus 9 frames equals 24 frames, making punishing running shine directly from dash forward unreactable with pivot grab. If you try reacting, you will get hit by running shine. However, if accounting for the frames of possible cooldown, if Fox assumes they will land the shine, they will wait 6 frames, accounting for hit lag and acting out of shine. Most commonly, they will wave dash forward afterwards, which takes 3 frames of jump squat lag plus 10 frames of wave dash lag equals 13 frames. If accounting for possible cooldown, it's 19 plus 6 plus 13 equals 38 frames of possible lag, which can make punishing running shine from dash forward very reactable with 14 frames to spare. This makes it so you can react during Fox's later part of his dash rather than the start of the dash if you suspect a running shine, which you can be creative with the math here. This is a huge if, however, as this is very reliant on reading the possible cooldown, since the diverging possible cooldown is shorter than most people's natural reaction time. If there is a diverging option tree from reacting to the possible cooldown, how do you know which option tree to pick? Fundamental number 5 regarding mix-ups will explain in much greater detail. If you try to react later, such as reacting only at the cooldown, then diverging options are possible from the Fox, such as spot dodge, attack, moving away, etc., that are often worse than reacting earlier, although exceptions can apply. Let's do another Fox example, where he acts out of shine with a short hop nair, rather than wave dash forward. If Fox assumes he'll hit with the nair, they will account for nair hit lag, and will not fast fall until later, resulting to 18 frames in the air and 6 frames of L cancel lag equals 24 frames it makes total, making this possibly reactable if Marth sees the Fox jumping post-shine. Which one is preferable to react to? Fox's dash or the post-shine action? I would argue, at least initially, post-shine is preferable, since there are less diverging options post-shine compared to a dash, which can be cancelled to many different options, so the odds are lower outplaying a dash forward reaction point versus a post-shine reaction point. The general rule of thumb with reaction points is that you want to ideally react to an option tree that's more committal to have as high reliability as possible, winning the interaction. It should be noted that this is not always true depending on your game plan, which will be discussed in fundamental number 5. Notice that Marth doesn't have to close distance. If Marth needs to close distance for even 1 frame, then pivot grabbing Fox's nair is no longer reactable, and Marth will get hit from a consistent running shine nair from Fox. This is why understanding threat ranges of moves is important. If you space too far away, then you unnecessarily close distance, and therefore add more time, and make certain reaction thresholds impossible to reactively cover. Conversely, if you space too close, then you will just straight up get hit. Visualizing how far the move precisely lands goes a long way. Why is reaction time not calculated for Fox? Typically, for the attacker, you cannot afford to react to things unless the defender is in significant lag. In the above example, if Fox tries to, say, react to Marth's dashback, his reaction time will take 15 frames to then make a decision on Running Shine. That would make Running Shine 34 frames to complete, not counting the possible cooldown lag, either after standing there for 15 frames or entering run for an additional 1 to 15 frames, in which Marth can potentially pivot grab very easily in between the run. In other words, reacting while attacking tends to limit the potential of landing the attack, and therefore must usually be preemptive. However, it's often possible for the attacker to soft confirm their attacks as long as the lag is equal or longer than natural reaction time. While they must commit to the attack, Fox can combine both the lag committed with reaction time. With Running Shine, for example, Fox can use the first few frames of their dash forward and soft confirm that the Marth is dashing back, which the Fox can react to if it makes sense to commit to a Running Shine. If Fox sees otherwise from the first frame of their dash forward that their Running Shine has 0% chance of hitting Marth because they see that Marth full hops, for example, while Fox commits to a full dash forward, Fox can choose to pivot to something else rather than a guaranteed failure with Shine. This is why committing to something that's flexible with low lag, like Dash Dance, is preferable. While the attacker cannot fully react while taking space, they can absolutely leverage their possible cooldown cues to manipulate the defender, and can possibly react during their divergence, if the defender is in enough lag. For example, Fox can do a Running Shine waveland back, rather than rising Nair, and during the waveland back, Fox can react if the Marth opts for a grab. If Fox is close enough to react to the Marth grab, 29 frames of lag, then Fox can afford to react, with 15 frames of reaction time, plus 8 frames of jump cancel grab, plus 6 frames of leeway to cover distance, guaranteed. Notice how the way the attacker can react is by briefly giving up the space they took. If the attacker wants to manipulate, but in a more aggressive manner, there are even less leeways to react, unless the defender gives up a significant amount of space. Why does giving up space give the most leeway for reactions? Giving up space, as long as distance doesn't need to be closed later on, actually creates the defender time, as the attacker needs to close additional space. By letting the attacker whiff their move, so they're at least in possible cooldown, such as Fox recovering with their L cancel, is why whiff punishes are so common. There are several positions where the defender can preemptively give up space and then react, rather than giving up space on reaction, similar to the attacker soft confirming during their startup. This can make certain reactions easier/possible, but can be subject to manipulation if the attacker catches on. Preemptively giving up space works best against attacks that are unreactable at close distance but have significant cooldown with no potential variance. Most characters' dash attacks are like this. Fox's dash attack is a frame 4 startup, but has 36 frames of lag. As long as you are positionally outside the threat range of dash attack, which may be necessary with a preemptive dashback if the opponent is close enough, you should be able to always reactively punish dash attack due to the significant cooldown of the move. While the attacker cannot leverage the cooldown aspect of the move as described in earlier examples, the attacker can leverage the unreactable startup of the move to gain a potential advantage in the next interaction. There are permutations of the interactions described above. Marth can wave dash back, so grab is only 7 frames, which changes the math. Marth can also just simply set the reaction point post-shine rather than the dash forward, or even set the reaction point earlier, before the dash forward, with a more preemptive run-up grab instead. Fox can also manipulate the reaction point by dash dancing, different move selection, and waveland rather than Nair. Reactions can only cover so much. Within the 15 frames of reaction time and other factors, if there are branching options the attacker can do within the frames, then a mix-up is forced in some way. In the fox running shine example, if the fox chooses to do an overshoot running nair rather than a running shine, the math changes significantly. If the Marth was operating off of dashing back from shine range, Marth will get hit by the nair instead. This forces a change in playing around threat range, or different move responses which will not be as effective as playing around running shine. Even with the rising nair post-shine example, fox has the potential to do a waveland back or double jump instead of committing to a nair, which would mitigate part of the landing lag and would be effective against Marth's pivot grab. What should be prioritized when reacting to a potential mix-up tree? Prioritize the more imminent threat, typically the move with the greater threat range. The overshoot nair has more range than shine, so even if you are further away if fox does shine, you can react recognizing that it's too late to react against running shine and opt to just play the next interaction, given that because of the further distance Marth spaces around nair, it is impossible to directly punish shine nair. If possible, react to the more distinguishable cue than the more ambiguous cue. It's much more preferable to react to fox's short hop, as it's much more distinguishable and less possibilities compared to fox dashing, which could result in many possibilities. If forced to react against a more ambiguous cue, react with as low commitment as possible with your own given tools. With a Marth example given earlier, his pivot grab is often reactable, and is therefore riskier. However, if Marth can set up a preemptive short hop back late fair instead, this is significantly lower risk, as they cannot confirm as reliably as the pivot grab lag. Perhaps it's better to directly attack to challenge their offense. Maybe it's better to reposition for an advantage next interaction. To truly weigh which mix-ups to play more in depth, fundamental number 5 addresses this fully. While outplays can happen from manipulating reaction points, the real value of setting viable reaction points is that you reduce the possibilities rather than trying to hit thin air. Without a concrete reaction point, you are trying to hit one of millions of permutations that can possibly happen. When you do have concrete reaction points, the permutations are reduced to a few certain outcomes that you can decide are worth playing. Additionally, being aware what part of your character's toolkit is reactable or not can make you significantly harder to hit. This is how melee interactions can be tangibly grasped. Circling back to why you may miss jump cancel or pivot grabs in a real match, if you miscalculate what you can humanly react to in a given reaction point scenario, say you react to Fox's dash forward for his running shine, intending to pivot grab his shine directly, you either do a late pivot grab and get shined, or subconsciously you may know that you're too late and try to force a pivot grab that is naturally rushing the input, which will result in a failed dash grab, leading to you getting shined anyway. Having proper reaction points in both tech skill and neutral game is key for overall consistency. If you are not applying reaction points properly, an opponent that properly understands reaction points on top of proper execution will be able to manipulate you more than is necessary. You will be slow to respond to certain sequences, such as standing there longer than necessary due to a late reaction point, and either get hit unnecessarily or miss out on crucial openings. Fundamental number 3. Optimizing punish strings. Making the most out of a hit. Ideally, after building up a good rhythm, reaction points for your tech skill, and having basic fundamentals on how to land a hit, you want to maximize the value of landing a hit. You may have heard the adage that punish game is the most important thing in Melee. And while I agree that it has the greatest impact, in order to build a good punish game, you need to have sufficient understanding of the mentioned fundamentals beforehand. Mapping flowcharts. Map out guaranteed flowcharts on each character using concrete reaction points and rhythm, utilizing Uncle Punch and practice routines if needed. You should know how these vary with platform extensions. For example, Marth's Grab versus Fox and Falco. Do you know the rhythm/technique of instant pummel up throw, instant up tilt, tilt turnaround grab up tilt, pivot grab, etc.? Do you know how the reaction point execution 15 frames before the up throw animation ends will vary due to their different weight? Falco is later due to him having a slightly heavier weight. Does up throw at a certain percent grant enough stun to react to their DI? especially when a platform is involved? When platforms are involved, does the math work out where you can react/cover to their tech pattern with X move relative to their positional setup? Similar concepts apply to edge guards. You should be very comfortable with ledge mechanics, offstage play, and recovering well. For spacies in particular, audio reactions can be relevant versus their side B. Typically, humans have a 10-frame audio reaction time versus the normal 15-frame visual reaction time. This is relevant due to the distinct sound side B makes and changes reaction point calculations. For online melee in particular, there is a natural 4-frame built-in delay. If you open FM, config, audio, you have an option to set up exclusive Wasapi where you only have a 2-frame delay. Be aware that enabling Wasapi shuts off all other audio in your PC. All extremely important prerequisites that build upon previous fundamentals in order to optimize your guaranteed punishes. However, flowcharts are not so simple as previously described. Not all flowcharts are created equally. Let's talk about the 4 different types of flowcharts that are possible. Easily guaranteed flowcharts. The execution and reaction window to perform easily guaranteed flowcharts are incredibly generous, making this type of flowchart very reliable. For example, Marth's upthrow uptilt 3 times plus is infamous for how easy and high reward this type of follow-up can be. Once you initially learn the timing, you have no excuse to ever really drop this type of combo, and it is a must-learn combo whenever you can apply this. Fake guaranteed. A bit of a paradoxical description, but bear with me. With the sandbox nature of Melee's combo system, naturally, a lot of extensions are not true at all due to the defensive mechanics. This can involve CC, OMSATEC, S/regular DI, buffering double jump, slide-offs, etc. As long as the opponent does the appropriate counterplay, the fake flowchart should never work out. For example, Marth chain-grabbing Falco at 10%. If Falco does the appropriate counterplay of slight DI in while timing a shine post-hit stun, Falco can always shine before Marth can pivot grab. The only way this can work for Marth is if Falco DIs away or times the shine poorly, which is reliant on Falco not knowing the appropriate counterplay. Note that the counterplay for the Falco has very little cost. The slight DI in doesn't affect tech chasing very much, and the shine afterwards beats everything Marth can do afterwards since up tilt comes out too late and doesn't knock down. Thus, there is no mix-up scenario here. Challenging guaranteed. The execution and reaction window to perform challenging guaranteed flowcharts are very tight, sometimes edging the threshold of if it's even humanly consistently possible to perform. These types of flowcharts can only be performed by the top-end echelon of players, and even those players can experience variance with their performance. For example, Marth doing forward throw reaction tech chasing on spacies. Due to how tight the reaction window is, this should only be done if you are confident performing RTC consistently, at least 90% plus. If you are not consistent with RTC, you are susceptible to getting punished by your opponent, despite you getting the initial hit. Mix-up. When the diverging option tree is less than 15 frames, and one option cannot cover them all, then you are forced to pick an option that covers X while Y will be dropped, forcing a mix-up scenario. This will be discussed more in depth later on in this segment. Backup flowcharts. While in theory you should hit all your follow-ups perfectly, at the end of the day, we're all human, and we can even sometimes mess up the easily guaranteed flowcharts. Especially if we take it to the next level to perform challenging guaranteed flowcharts, we will almost certainly drop them even if we are playing our best. Having some kind of contingency plan when we inevitably drop our flowcharts is very necessary to plan for. Some flowcharts allow you to bandage a potentially dropped sequence. If not, you can maybe still have advantage afterwards, whereas other dropped flowcharts are quite unforgiving and will result in you getting reversaled. Many times, though, you can choose the level of forgivability on your dropped flowcharts and plan upon that. For example, when Marth goes for a runoff fair edgeguard, and you happen to mistime the double jump afterwards, then you will die. There is no forgiveness with this flowchart, as you will be unable to recover afterwards. Those types of flowcharts are required to have confident mastery to rarely screw up for the reward to be justified. If you are not confident with your mastery of runoff fair, going for other options that allow for more forgiveness is necessary, such as runoff double jump fair, dare, or grabbing ledge. The first option is slower, but will not kill you if you mess up, and the latter option will probably make the flowchart more complicated, but those options are much better than just dying by messing up the runoff fair. Do not interpret this as an excuse to never do hard flowcharts. Practice them to mastery in the future. Example 2. Marth drops a throw tech chase versus Falco. If you try to react late versus tech in place, you will get reversaled with shine or spot dodge. If you prioritize covering tech in place and accept that you will sometimes lose to tech rolls, you technically have more windows of forgiveness by not immediately getting reversaled. Example 3. Marth can do up throw up tilt versus Sheik that's technically guaranteed from 22 to 30%. However, this assumes frame perfect up tilt timing and that you have player 4. What if you want to go for up tilt at 15%? In cases where Marth times a slightly late up tilt or Sheik double jumps, there is still that window of forgiveness since Marth cannot get immediately punished for whiffing the up tilt. Although Marth has no guaranteed punish after dropping the flowchart, Marth does have advantage state and can choose how to proceed. Mixup flowcharts. Some flowcharts are not guaranteed because you need to make a prediction based on few possible outcomes that require different answers that do not cover all outcomes, otherwise known as a mixup. This mixup read may be required because it's significantly higher reward than a guaranteed flowchart. The guaranteed flowchart is too impractical due to how frame tight and complex the inputs are, or it's the only real punish option you have available. You could also be having a significant off day as well. When making a read, you must have a game plan of what the big picture looks like in terms of reward, risk, coverage, and overall reliability of the mixup tree you're willing to take. This draws upon fundamental number 5, similar to advantage state. When making a read, you ideally want to favor options that will not get you punished very much if you whiff, while still getting the kill if you do land the hit, as well as having a high success rate that covers a lot of options. Low risk, high reward, max coverage, high reliability. Conversely, you want to avoid options that will get you killed if you whiff, get very little if you land the hit, covers a hyper-specific option, and is very unlikely to work. High risk, low reward, low coverage, low reliability. Not every read opportunity has the luxury of the best case scenarios. What's more likely to happen is that there will be some reads that can kill you or your opponent, high variance gamble, or reads that will not immediately kill you or your opponent, poking, that are often more readily available. High variance gambles tend to not cover much and have low reliability initially, whereas poking tends to cover more with high reliability, due to most skilled opponents being fearful of the punish from high variance gambles, so they naturally play around it. Of course, this is not always true, depending on context, and ratings can be highly subjective. Ideally, start off your reads with pokes rather than high variance gambles, so that you get data and information about your opponent's patterns. Example, Marth edgeguarding Sheik. When throwing Sheik off stage, Marth can poke by threatening grabbing ledge by short hop drift in place. This will check Sheik doing a double jump aerial, and Marth can counter with a free bear. While this won't kill Sheik immediately, it gives Marth more information about future edgeguards. Even if the bear whiffed, Marth is still actionable to avoid reversals from a Sheik ledge dash. Building upon the previous example, Marth has gotten enough data to start taking gambles for Sheik's double jump aerials that they tend to favor too much. Marth is more willing to take bigger risks with short hop dare, F smash, edge cancel bear to dare, etc. Those options are more likely to kill Sheik, but have much bigger risks if they whiff, as they can get poofed by early Sheik up B, susceptible to Sheik ledge dash attack due to Marth's lag, etc. It is a mistake to never gamble when it comes to making reads. Even though gambles tend to not be very reliable, with data points you can greatly mitigate the unreliable aspect of gambles. If you only poke for your reads, your opponent will know to only commit to options that never lose to a poke, but can lose to a high variance gamble. Say if Marth only pokes for Sheik's double jump aerial and that's it, the Sheik can simply do a low sweet spot recovery, or some variant every time. Conversely, it's also a mistake to only gamble. While it may work out sometimes, you will eventually give your opponent opportunities to flip the table, and they get a reversal punish for free. If Marth F-smashes predicting the Sheik's double jump aerial, Sheik can time an air dodge on stage and grab as a guaranteed deadly punish. If Marth poked, Sheik would not have guaranteed punish. It's all about keeping a balance. You will be wrong sometimes, despite poking. Poking only reduces variance, but doesn't eliminate all variance. That's just part of the game, provided that you are doing the prerequisites properly, such as being within threat range. There may also be additional nuances that can affect variables. You should constantly update your flowchart decisions based on context, percent, and positioning to determine which flowchart has the highest value. TechChaseStringSpecifics. This deserves its own segment, as not only is this universal across the cast, but it's much more complex than it appears. Reaction tech chase, RTC, based on the early tech animation. Tech in place universally lasts 26 frames. 15 frames of reaction time, plus 7 for grab, equals 22 frames in an ideal setup, which makes reacting within the first 4 frames possible. What's not universal is the distinguishing frames between tech in place and tech rolls. While distinguishing Spacey's tech in place versus tech rolls are possible within the first 4 frames, this is not true for Sheik, because her tech in place and tech roll in are not distinguishable until frame 7. 15 plus 7 for grab plus 7th frame equals 29 frames, which Sheik can spot dodge if you try to react to tech in place. 26 frames, and if you react early versus tech in place, you will whiff versus tech roll in sometimes. Even if tech chasing may not be true for some characters, consider their escape options. Falcon, for example, is only distinguishable by frame 6, but his escape options are at best jab, which comes out frame 3 and can be CC'd. Contrast this to Spacey's, where their escape option is a frame 1 shine. Certain conditions can change to make tech chasing harder, impossible, or easier. If Marth needs to JC grab, it's now 9 frames. If Marth needs to close additional distance, add in 2 to 5 plus frames. If Marth already set up a short hop up air, diagonally front, for a platform tech chase, it's 6 frames. If Marth down smash, it's 6 to 7 frames and eliminates jump cancel plus distance. Tech chasing is nuanced and requires diligent math checks on how you are setting up. How soon can you tell the distinction of tech in place versus tech rolls? Does the math work out with your reaction time plus frame data of a move plus distance you cover? Can you set up a wave dash grab rather than a jump cancel grab? Important prerequisites to answer before you even try to RTC. When tech chasing with a grab specifically, determine the first frame of distinguishing DI, and if you can cover that distance appropriately. Distinguish missed tech animation to either immediately hit, preferably not countered by SDI up or CC/OMSA tech, or crouch tech chase. Know when missed tech post-animation can be distinguishable if crouch tech chasing for both stomach and back, as they have different animations. Required if you want to cover all 4 options afterwards. Extend this concept to platform tech chasing. Know high reward mix-ups when RTC is relatively low expected value. Contrary to popular belief, it's not always optimal to reaction tech chase forever, due to slide-off and overall extreme difficulty of consistently tech chasing, especially when the read has much better value overall, at least for Marth. Cutting-edge technology is constantly being updated. Keep exploring and lab the most optimal string by referring to fundamental number 6, Uncle Punch. If you are not applying your punish flowcharts properly, an opponent that understands punish flowcharts, in addition to having proper execution and reaction points, can simply win off of significantly fewer neutral openings than you. They also have proper backup plans if they drop their flowcharts to still kill you. You may also accidentally give them even better punishes because of your punishes being off, or improper mix-up evaluation that results in you getting reversaled to death. Fundamental number 4. Optimizing defense and reversal opportunities. AKA fuck your opponent. You never want to give your opponents more value from their guaranteed flowchart than they should have. Having a strong reversal game is what punishes an opponent's bad day the most. This can sometimes create unfair variance, where you get hits you don't earn because the opponent fucked up. But it's on you to take advantage of this, otherwise known as the phenomenon of we both played bad. This fundamental draws on all previously discussed fundamentals. Some objectives are optimizing your defense when getting hit. Can you safely get out of the situation? If not, can you mitigate the resulting damage as much as possible? For example, instead of getting auto-comboed by Falcon's nairs and up airs as Marth can reduce Falcon's combo potential by SDIing up the nairs and DIing down and away the up airs, while switching to survival DI if Marth doesn't immediately get hit by a move, as Knee is slow and has enough hit lag to cover the switch to survival DI. Once you safely get out of the situation, do you have enough frames to guarantee a reversal? If yes, go for the reversal opportunity. A reversal occurs when, after successfully defending yourself, you gain the opportunity to punish the opponent despite them initially hitting you first. You want to ideally reversal with a big combo/kill opportunity. As Marth, instead of reversaling with down tilt, ideally you want to reversal with grab, up air, dash attack, F smash, etc. If not, though, assess if you are in advantage or disadvantage. Then, refer to fundamental number 5, regarding playing these game states. Often, going for reversals is a high variance gamble. It may be correct to play the situation as safe as possible instead. Defense responses. Regardless of how the opponent plays, you should know your opponent's flowcharts as described in fundamental number 3, and the defensive counterplay you should have ready for each. Easily guaranteed. There is likely not much the defender can do, let alone a reversal opportunity. For example, Marth taking a down throw from Sheik at 100% plus. Sorry Marth, Sheik has the easiest flowcharts following up on this 99.99% of the time in most positions. The Sheik has to be playing incredibly badly to mess this up. I literally cannot think of any examples off the top of my head where a top-level Sheik messed this up in a high-profile set where plat/teetering at edge isn't involved. Fake guaranteed. Typically, if you check against their fake guaranteed flowchart, and they commit to it, you can typically get a reversal opportunity completely for free. For example, Fox tries to wave shine up smash Marth below 15%. As long as Marth is holding down and buffering a tech in place, Marth can automatically defend against the possible up smash and nair Fox can do, and reversal for free. While Fox should never go for this type of follow-up due to the minimal effort counterplay Marth can do, Fox can go for it, and it costs Marth very little to check that. Note that what it costs is that Marth will be doing no DI versus the only real guaranteed follow-up Fox has, which is grab. But typically that's the DI Marth wants to do anyway. Therefore, it's not a mix-up scenario. Fox may be desperate, as up smash is typically more reward than up throw, which is why they may go for a fake combo that has higher reward than a guaranteed one, so being ready to tech it and reversal with grab is an important check just in case they try to get more than possible. Challenging guaranteed. Like a fake guaranteed flowchart, it's worth checking these, preferably with minimal/no-cost counterplay, but it's very likely that those checks end up being mix-ups. Reversals are likely a gamble at that point. Example 1. Marth SDIing Fox's shine using quarter SDI away to get 2 inputs to make Fox's wave shine follow-up as hard as possible, which Marth can attempt to reversal with dashback pivot grab. Even though this should technically be guaranteed for Fox to cover in theory with optimized execution, this is very hard for Fox to consistently perform due to the tight frame and reaction windows, contrary to the Sheik down throw example earlier. What can force this to be a mix-up, however, is that Fox can go for an overshoot if they are not confident with hitting a regular grab. Example 2. Marth is getting tech chased by any given character on the side platform. The opponent tries to RTC, but Marth times an optimized shield drop fair/up air as soon as the tech animation ends, as the opponent is slightly late with the RTC. What can force this to be a mix-up, however, is that the opponent waits and can punish Marth's post-tech chase option. Mix-up. As described previously, the attacker may opt for a mix-up rather than a challenging guaranteed flowchart, as typically a mix-up is much easier to perform and can even be higher reward for them. You must assess what level of gamble you want to take, which will be described in the next segment. For example, Fox upthrows Marth at low %. Marth can SDI at any direction depending on how the Fox does their up air, making the up air follow-up itself never guaranteed for Fox. Fox can cover some SDI direction, however, making it so Marth can never reliably do one particular SDI direction as a guaranteed escape. Fox can poke with their up air by doing a short hop up air, making so he can never get immediately reversaled. Or Fox can gamble with their up air by full hop double jump up air, hard reading a Marth SDIing up and catching their double jump. If Marth does other SDI directions, Fox is in danger of getting immediately reversaled by Marth's up air. If there's one general rule of thumb of what you should try to not get hit by, it's getting hit with an easily guaranteed combo opportunity from your opponent, which is why grab is one of the first things Marth should try to look out for versus Sheik. Skill mastery with Punish Flowcharts, fundamental number 3, can overcome the challenging guaranteed combo opportunities. A Fox may not be afraid of a Marth that doesn't convert well off of their grab openings, so naturally, they'll respect grab less. However, if the Marth builds mastery with their guaranteed, challenging follow-ups and mix-ups, Fox is naturally going to respect grab more. However, despite mastery of guaranteed challenging flowcharts, variance can absolutely happen, even amongst the best players in the world. They're challenging for a reason, and it's usually worth testing them with good defense. Many players may opt to instead play a mix-up to bypass the difficulty, which is very important to recognize that the defender is doing both reversals and pokes, to not lock in predictable patterns. Mix-up defense flowchart. With mix-ups, it's very similar to the mix-up/read flowchart described in fundamental number 3, except the defender playing the mix-up is typically in a disadvantaged state. The overall value of being in disadvantage is typically lower than the opponent in advantage, but that doesn't mean the defender doesn't have any play left. The defender can make calls by making a high variance gamble, or taking a low risk reliable option. Note how for the attacker, their poke usually has no risk, whereas the person recovering usually has some amount of risk. As described previously, it's a mistake to never gamble, or always recover with minimal risk. Unlike the attacker, however, the player in disadvantage doesn't have the luxury to have a no-risk data point fallback, and must make a hard read based on previous recovery interactions, meaning that reliability of defending in disadvantage is often dubious and reliant on being adaptive. While it's preferable to do the lowest risk possible recovering, it's not always guaranteed to work out. These are relatively common situations where clean defense and possible reversal opportunities can happen. Acting out of tech chase cleanly with a dash/action. Double jump/attack out of tight strings and or weak moves. SDI or DI to make strings harder and even get a reversal opportunity. Shield dropping out of platform attacks. Clean sweet spot recovery and or mix-up to edgeguard reversal. Ledge options. For Marth, ledge-shield/up tilt, or late fair at ledge. Clean crouch cancel action. Not everyone plays perfectly all the time. Tournament environments also induce significant stress, where variance and fundamentals can happen. Having strong defense and reversal game can sometimes have the highest impact if your opponent's fundamentals are off in a given game. Regardless of testing your opponent's fundamentals, it will always be relevant if you can correctly play mix-up trees. Also, nullifying their fake punishes as much as possible is always a good thing. Fundamental number 5. Expected Value Evaluation Gameplan. The end game of your neutral. Once fundamentals numbers 1 through 4 are cleanly understood, your application of game plans begin to matter significantly. Instead of having a useless game plan that was riddled with poor execution, lacking reaction points, where you get reversaled from your punishes, and not defending properly, you ideally should have proper fundamentals to further augment your game plan. In a player versus player game, it is impossible to win every single interaction consistently due to the sheer permutations of what can happen. However, you can at least bend the odds to your favor, and if you play a top-tier character with a favorable matchup, you should win more times than the opponent. However, even in the losing side of it, you can mitigate a lot of the downside with knowledge of what to go for, not throwing, and making the extra read to mitigate the losing side of it. Describing expected value. Melee is not a straightforward RPS game. It's more of a weighted RPS game. Traditional rock, paper, scissors is that winning one RPS wins you 1 point, and losing an RPS loses you 0 points. This means that all options have equal value. Weighted RPS, on the other hand, has some options that are more impactful than others. Let's say, for example, rock is plus 5 points, whereas scissors and paper are worth plus 1 point. Also, if you lose an RPS, scissors is minus 5 points, whereas paper and rock are only minus 1 point. Clearly, we see that rock is worth the most value, whereas scissors is the least value, thereby creating inequality of each option's value. Melee primarily operates from some form of weighted RPS system that exists in some way. How you weigh each option, though, is largely opinionated. I cannot tell you definitively what each value precisely is, but with analysis and experience, you can find a close answer intuitively. Expected value, known as EV, means that amongst all possible outcomes from a reaction point or threat range spacing, do you accept at least the majority of outcomes that can occur? If yes, then you would consider this a positive EV. If not, negative EV. These can be intuitively calculated by weighing risk/reward and the reliability/coverage of the option, which can predict what kind of outcomes happen. Generally speaking, options that are low risk, high reward, with high reliability and coverage tend to produce positive EV, and options that are high risk, low reward, with low reliability and coverage tend to produce negative EV options. What constitutes the type of risk, reward, and reliability coverage is largely opinionated based on what is measured as the type of risk, but the general rule of thumb is that reward indicates how much potential damage you can inflict and the percent chance they die. If, say, from the weighted RPS examples, you were to rate the gains from 1 to 10, if a move has a high chance of killing/building significant percent, you can weigh this as a +10 option. Risk is evaluating that if you get hit, what is the worst case scenario you can suffer in terms of percent and positioning? Again, if you were to rate the losses from 1 to 10, if you take significant damage and have a high chance of dying, you can weigh this as -10. Where you end up in disadvantage can also play a factor. Reliability is the odds of the option actually working, initially based on character strengths and metagame. Even if the option doesn't directly hit the opponent, is it straightforward for the opponent to punish or accomplish secondary advantages? In other words, how likely is it that you get hit back? If I were to rate the reliability of Marth's F-Smash against a Fox in a scrap scenario, I would rate this 2 out of 10, because of Fox's natural strength of his burst options, which usually beats Marth's F-Smash in a scrap. This rating, of course, can change based on opponents' habits, regardless of Fox's strength as a character. If the Fox plays more passive in scraps, I can up their rating to 4 out of 10. Still, though, F-Smash doesn't have much flexibility and is easy for Fox to punish. Something like down tilt in place is usually going to have a higher reliability rating than dash attack, because down tilt in place is significantly harder to punish compared to dash attack if both of them whiff, due to down tilt having much better flexibility of less end lag. Coverage is the amount of options you naturally counter from your opponent's tools. If you were to rate the coverage of Marth's Nair in place versus Falco in meaningful threat ranges, it usually covers approaching lasers and aerials. It does not cover laser in place, full hop, and retreats. You can roughly rate this coverage as 4 out of 10. Coverage is usually paired with reliability as well. Even though Marth isn't covering laser in place, the post-take laser option, thanks to the flexibility of taking the laser in the air, allows for a falling fair. Overall, I'd rate Marth's Nair 9 out of 10 in terms of reliability, as it defends well versus most Falco options except for very tight whiff punish timings that are a read from Falco, and preemptive full hop approaches. Overall, Nair in place, despite initially covering only a modest amount of options, is actually more valuable than it looks, because most other options it doesn't cover are still highly reliable for Marth, making Nair in place a high EV. Coverage matters most in advantage situations, such as edgeguarding, juggling, etc., where ratings can reach 9 out of 10, i.e. Marth doing double jab to cover Fox's side beat. Does adaptation play a role in EV? Absolutely. Expected value does not stay constant in the sense that while risk and reward and coverage typically don't change, the reliability can increase or decrease depending on your opponent's habits and your own. Therefore, an X factor to consider is the probability the move will land, as even if the move is traditionally risky, if you are 100% certain that it will land, then the risk factor is simply irrelevant. The same logic applies to traditionally high EV moves too, where it's spammed so much that the opponent will specifically call it out every time that the reliability of the move decreases. The Marth Nair in place versus Falco, despite its decent coverage and high reliability, does have holes that the Falco can read, and can result in significant damage to the Marth. How should you calculate what's positive or negative EV? Highly subjective in the first place with the 1 to 10 points rating. The rating you give to each scale should foreshadow potential outcomes that can happen. Are you okay with the majority of them? These are some things to prioritize when considering EV. Reliability. How reliable do you think a move or movement is should be the first consideration, as this determines if your decision can even work or not. Coverage. What are your options trying to cover? Is it hyper-specific to one specific option, or can it broadly cover more moves? Does it pair well with the reliability of a move? Risk. Given your game state, if your move fails, do you potentially die for failing, or is the damage taken minimal? Reward. If you happen to land your move, how much do you gain? This would be the ideal ordering of what I would personally prioritize when it comes to evaluating EV. But of course, this is subjective at the end of the day, and you're entitled to your opinions and ratings. I personally value how reliable a move is most, because not only are there more outcomes that are naturally good for me, I also get to play for my data points that don't usually involve sacrificing my stock/percent, but rather stalemates or disadvantages. I also may change the ordering of this based on the game state. For example, I may not care nearly as much about risk and favor reward more if I'm up 3 stocks to 1. Example 1. Marth Ditto, where I'm the Marth doing a dash forward run cancel F smash, where the opponent is 50% and I'm at 50%. I'd rate this as +8 for the reward, -8 for the risk, 3 for reliability, and 3.5 for coverage. Despite F smash covering a decent amount of options such as short hop and large spacing, F smash is not very flexible on whiff, and still loses to plenty of options. Compounded that failing to properly F smash would mean that I eat a major punish at 50%. I personally do not think that's worth the potential reward, and would consider this naturally negative EV. Example 2. Same Marth Ditto scenario, however I'm doing a short hop late fair in place, right outside of the Marth's dash attack range. I'd rate this as +5 for the reward, -8 for the risk, 8 for reliability, and 4 for coverage. While the reward is definitely lesser than F smash, the fact that the short hop late fair has much greater flexibility and is done at a safe distance naturally boosts the reliability rating for me. It still has good coverage, covering a lot of approaches. While the risk of getting punished is still significant, it's much less likely to occur compared to F smash. I would consider this naturally positive EV. From this example, if I have absolutely no information on my opponent, I would probably default to short hop fair in place at 50% outside of dash attack spacing because of the positive EV I roughly subjectively calculated. I might start doing run cancel F smash at some point based on my data points, because I can start to mitigate the risk by increasing the move's reliability. If I have plenty of data points so that the opposing Marth will retreat with only dashback or short hop within range of my F smash, I'd suddenly rate the reliability of F smash to be 9 rather than 3. Suddenly, this traditionally negative EV is positive EV in this very specific context. This is why copying top players' game plans is very difficult. They are constantly adapting to their subjective options which may not translate cleanly to your personal games. In other words, negative EVs should be done as a mix-up callout rather than your default game plan. If, on the other hand, my fair in place gets called out, that means I am getting too predictable with my fairs in place, so the reliability can go from 8 to 1. Even though it's traditionally a positive EV, because of my exploitable habits, this is now a negative EV. This is why you should avoid the always do X option rule, especially against lower-tiered characters. While the advice is well-intentioned, this hyperbolic advice is setting yourself up for failure if you remain predictable. Inflated EV. EVs can be inflated if you take advantage of deficient fundamentals your opponent might lack. While I rated my metrics to be out of 10, if you chump check your opponent's fundamentals successfully, you can inflate certain ratings to be like 15 out of 10. As while it technically shouldn't work, you got more value due to the lack of fundamental understanding. This is why having mastery of the first 4 fundamentals is paramount. You absolutely do not want to give your opponent more value than necessary. If you find that you're fighting players that give you inflated values, you may want to start finding better opponents, or teach them how to get better if they're receptive to it. Describing interactions. There are some primary ways to win interactions in Melee you should know in order to understand the big picture. As a refresher, a mix-up is a situation where due to an unreactable set of options requiring different answers that cannot cover everything, you must read what you think is incoming. There are direct mix-ups. You commit to a move that in some way can possibly hit the opponent. Reposition mix-ups. You can advance your position, such as disengaging where you retreat, and the odds of you getting hit is low/impossible, or you take space, where the next position for a direct mix-up is much more favorable. A pivot grab is perhaps the most obvious example of a repositional mix-up. Playing a combination of both mix-up types can result in significantly more positive EVs than only playing direct or repositioning mix-ups. Remember to apply the EV formula and determine if it makes sense to be direct versus reposition. They all operate under mix-ups at the end of the day. Is it possible to play the mix-up or reposition in a nuanced manner, with some kind of confirmation/option select plays to cover multiple options? Nuance is similar to checking against fake guaranteed combos, described in fundamental number 4, where you can often check for free bad options your opponent can pick. It can increase the reliability of a given option. Example 1. Marth nairs to cover a standard approaching laser, but can also take laser fair if they react to the Falco lasering in place into an approaching laser. Even though the nair lost the initial mix-up, the nuance of covering another option from the confirmation makes the probability of winning an interaction higher, and therefore higher EV. Example 2. Marth dash dancing low percent versus Peach attempting to float cancel low nairs. Marth can dash back to cover an instant dash attack and confirms Peach's length and approach of her float cancel nair, and if it's the furthest length, Marth can pivot grab. Even though Peach can spot dodge given my delayed reaction point to confirm the drift and length, as long as Marth is holding down, he can CC the dash attack, since it'll likely be a weak hit given the distance. If Peach does a more undershoot float cancel nair, Marth does not commit to a pivot grab from the reaction confirmation and continues to dash dance. From utilizing a lot of nuanced details that increase the probability of Marth winning a mix-up, it can give the edge necessary to maximize expected values. Example 3. In the Marth Ditto, Marth A does a fair in place, and might either dash back or down tilt. Marth B reacts to the jump, but is a bit outside the range of fair, and isn't quite in range to cleanly whiff punish the landing of fair, and isn't quite sure what Marth A will do with the landing and post mix-up. Since Marth B can't quite evaluate the optimal direct mix-up EV being worth it, Marth B chooses to reposition by dashing forward and holding down. With this, he can react to the startup of Marth A's down tilt post-fair mix-up and get a clean CC jump cancel grab. If Marth A chooses to dash back, then Marth B has the advantage of taking space, even if Marth B didn't get a clean hit, therefore increasing Marth B's odds of landing a hit eventually. While there is still room to outplay, such as Marth A landing with JC grab, Marth B's odds of increasing the probability of their success by covering multiple options with nuance when taking space here is yet another edge that increases their EV plays. How can you test your own nuanced theories? Fundamental number 6 will help a lot in that regard. Sometimes you cannot play a nuanced mix-up/repositioning because the character has the tools to deal with the nuanced play. The Marth vs. Peach dash dance specific scenario doesn't work on Sheik because Peach is slow out of spot dodge, but Sheik can simply boost grab if you play this post-spot dodge scenario. The last variable you need to keep in mind when playing interactive mix-ups is determining if your opponent is reacting in some way. They're going all in with a maneuver, or somewhere in between with a confirmation. Defensive reactive. Your opponent generally is not making an immediate decision/commitment, so they are playing their position rather safely, and they will only commit when reacting to a certain cue. For example, your opponent is dash dancing right outside your immediate threat range. All-in attack. Your opponent generally is making some kind of immediate commitment that you should preemptively respect in some way. For example, your opponent is doing an immediate dash attack in front of your face. Confirmation. Your opponent soft commits an aggressive option that's usually not as committal as an all-in, and they are reacting to certain cues to determine if they want to go all-in or pivot to another option instead. For example, your opponent jumps very close to you and reactively decides if they want to attack or waveland back or double jump based on how you committed. As you play out interactions, it can become very clear what kind of style your opponent is going for, and you can counter accordingly based on their preferred style. Here are some examples of typical counters to each style based solely on the Marth Ditto. Defensive reactive. If you see a Marth fishing for a dash dance pivot grab, the attacking Marth can manipulate by doing a short hop forward to waveland back to bait out the pivot grab. Bait tactics are very strong to manipulate against reactive styles. All-in attack. If, say, you predict a Marth going for an immediate dash attack, typically all you need to do is defend against it preemptively by dash back or shield. While there's no impervious way to always win against all-aggressive all-ins, as long as you know the appropriate hard counters, you usually win in the long run by utilizing positive EV calculations. Confirmation. If you predict a Marth going for a short hop forward, the most straightforward way to beat them is by preemptively hitting them as they rise with Marth's aerial or F-smash. The reason why you want to hit them is generally because not only are they taking space unsafely, they are also reacting during their startup, meaning that they cannot react to preemptive attacks on time. If you notice, there is a bit of an RPS triangle between the three modes, similar to positional RPS described in Fundamentals number 2. A reactive playstyle tends to beat an all-in playstyle tends to be confirmations, and a confirmation style tends to be reactive styles. Some characters utilize each of those styles better than other styles, and it ultimately comes down to how you weigh them as positive or negative EV. Nevertheless, identifying how your opponent typically plays is key to determine what type of options to counter your opponent's interactions with adaptations. Unique character traits. Know how your character traits interact with your opponent's character traits. Tier lists exist for a reason, where, frankly, some characters' moves and character traits are better than other characters for multiple reasons, including the frame data, range, cooldown, reward of the move, etc. Therefore, not all moves and repositions are created equally. This heavily impacts what type of mix-up trees to go for depending on the matchup, where in theory, if you go for rock, but your opponent's rock is simply sharper, you just automatically lose that, and therefore it is not favorable to default to rock. For example, Marth does a run-up short-hop nair versus Fox's run-up short-hop nair. Depending on the positioning, either character can straight-up win the scenario. If they are both close to each other, Fox's short-hop nair wins due to his faster jump squat, dash speed, and faster frame data of nair. If they are both farther away from each other, Marth's short-hop nair wins due to the range of his nair outspacing Fox's short-hop nair. With this inherent inequality in mind, it's significantly better EV to play around their sharper rock with paper than trying to challenge them with your dull rock. It doesn't quite make sense to utilize dull rock often, that loses to both sharper rock and paper. Weigh your risk-reward ideally on positions that you can actually challenge them with. If Marth is close to Fox, Marth probably shouldn't challenge with short-hop nair himself, and reposition around Fox's short-hop nair to use Marth's superior range. If Fox is farther from Marth, Fox probably shouldn't challenge with short-hop nair himself, and reposition closer to Marth to better use Fox's superior burst rushdown. This further contributes to why Melee is a weighted RPS game rather than a standard RPS game. Default game plan strategy. As a general rule of thumb, high reliability options that have decent coverage are preferred, as they can give data collection with relatively low risk while simultaneously defending against aggressive options. The options being high reward and low risk are cherries on top. High risk, high reward options, while can seem attractive, are high variance plays that should be reserved for reads as you build up reliability. After some data collection, you can determine if you want to continue playing defensive, go for an aggressive gamble, or play in between and meaningfully pressure. Pressure will be explained later on. Game state determining EV. Positioning, frame advantage, percent, and sometimes timer/stock count. The options of what to even use must be defined beforehand. As Marth, does fair and place when Marth is at 10% interact well with CC versus Sheik at 10% when Marth is outside her F-tilt range? At what point was the jump performed, relative to the distance to Sheik? In reality, two types of EV plays were made with the short hop drift plus move choice, and the science of how fair works for CC depends on fundamental number 6. Depending on how this was performed, my evaluation is that this is at least a low-risk move, because Sheik needs to read with CC F-tilt or grab, neither of which I'm overly concerned about eating so much damage, given that I'm holding down versus F-tilt and my defense execution is good out of SDIing up-tilt/double jump out of regrab. It's also low reward. However, because I think the reliability is decently high, I'd rate this as positive EV. Specifics are extremely important, and this example draws a lot from previous fundamentals to evaluate appropriate EVs. Advantage and disadvantage state. A less overwhelming version of the neutral game is advantage state, which usually includes juggles, cornering the opponent, and/or edgeguard mix-ups. Advantage can be gained often from center control and positive frame advantage, but lower percent, having additional stocks, and timer count can contribute towards advantage state. Just because advantage state is achieved doesn't mean that you are guaranteed to win the interaction. However, general EVs are boosted to your favor, and nuanced options, reliability, are a lot stronger. What is often low risk in a lot of positions often turns into no risk positions. Very often your opponent has to win 2 separate interactions in order to hit your safe play. Hitting a direct mix-up is often straightforward and high reward, which is one of the best opportunities to greatly pressure the opponent. Pressure. Utilizing tools that highly threaten the opponent, usually with a combination of a high reward move and game state advantage, which usually should encourage them to make a prompt decision. Pressure is usually one of the more meaningful data collections you can get to make your gambles and other mix-ups more informed. Similar concept with disadvantage, usually from being cornered and frame disadvantage. Often EVs are not in your favor. What often happens is that if you want to directly hit your opponent, you need to win 2 mix-ups in a row, unless they choose to engage in a direct mix-up. Then only 1 mix-up win is needed. If you want to reposition, such as taking space, that mix-up results in a lesser disadvantaged state, rather than getting a direct hit immediately, versus your opponent wins 1 direct mix-up to get a hit. Your opponent can reposition, where even if you take space, they usually still have a slight advantage for the next interaction. The player in disadvantage often needs to hard read, with little reaction points to go off of. It's probably overall better EV for the disadvantaged player to assume the advantaged player will go for a direct mix-up and play around that. But if that is assumed too much, they can choose not to commit often by repositioning and getting a free opening. The counter to that is to take/hold space, but you are vulnerable to a direct mix-up hit. Even if you take space, your reward is that you're not in heavy disadvantage anymore, rather than necessarily getting a hit. Concrete example illustrating advantage versus disadvantage on both sides. Marth Ditto, where Marth A has center, and Marth B is shielding in the corner, but a wave dash out of shield down tilt will non-tipper hit Marth A if they stand still. Marth A can either play a direct mix-up of run-up grab as a starter, which can evolve with close dash dance, jumping in, etc. Marth B's counter mix-ups are spot dodge, jump nair, wave dash down tilt, etc. Marth A can also just reposition where instead of directly engaging, he can jump back, wave dash/dash back, full hop back, etc. in a way where even Marth B's furthest reaching move of wave dash out of shield down tilt or jump forward aerial will whiff. This is why if Marth B wants to win a direct mix-up in a scenario where Marth A is repositioning, he needs to mega overshoot, which given the frame data calculation and reaction point, that's basically winning 2 mix-ups in a row, as Marth A will react to the overshoot attempt. Marth A can also keep this overshoot in mind, where he can simply win the initial overshoot mix-up rather than just the post-overshoot mix-up. A much more sustainable way for Marth B to reliably interact in this situation is to instead take/maintain space by wave dash/jump in, but not committing to a laggy attack, or full hop waveland on side platform. While Marth B didn't win a mix-up directly, they are in a significantly less disadvantaged state and can play more favorable direct mix-ups compared to the last position if they so choose. However, Marth A can always hard call out this repositioning tactic from Marth B by just directly attacking, since Marth B is unlikely to be defending themselves reliably when repositioning. This is why Marth A overall has greater EV, and if Marth B wants to win this position, they need to hard read their opponent's pattern, and generally has less reward, and therefore has less EV. That being said, this is not an impossible position for Marth B, and Marth A can make wrong calls to get directly reversal to death, or disadvantaged state themselves. Variance can naturally happen. If you are not applying a proper game plan, your opponent, who has all prior fundamentals and a better game plan, will be able to eke out advantages that make it easier for them to outplay, whereas your outplays will not have as much value and are susceptible to reversals. The strength of your character, and how it interacts with the opponent's character, plays a major role in evaluating the value of your game plan, and if you believe the value is not enough, investing in another character may be a strong consideration once you've exhausted all prior fundamentals. Very likely, though, that switching characters will not solve your issues, unless you are a mid-tier or below main. Fundamental number 6. Frame data calculation and Uncle Punch labbing, how you actually know shit. In order to know what is possible from any given interaction, having knowledge of frame data and expertise with Uncle Punch tools are necessary to dissect hard questions that are not obvious from a glance and/or researching others' work. Important information tools. Websites like Melee Frame Data and such have frame data for all characters. Websites like iNeedData, which can calculate DI, crouch cancel, percents, launchers, etc. Be sure to fact check this with Uncle Punch replays, as the website can be very easy to misuse, so it never hurts to cross-check. If you are curious, make sure to check the full guide linked in the description. It has links attached. Important Uncle Punch tools to utilize. Learning the replay save state system. In order to utilize save states, you must be player 1. D-pad right is save, D-pad left is reload. Info display. State name and state frame are usual prerequisites. Hit lag, hit stun, and shield stun can also be important to know. Input display and frame advance. Custom trajectory DI. Using save states. Utilizing any save state scenario with info display and input display with frame advance in mind can help solve any questions with proper math being applied. If I wanted to know if reacting to Fox's short hop nair with pivot grab is possible, then I know I need 15 frames of reaction time plus 9 frames of pivot grab, 1 frame leniency equals 24 frames. Using Uncle Punch tech and frame data knowledge, I used Frame Advance tool to see that Fox spends 24 frames total when adding the frames spent in the air, 18 frames, plus L cancel lag, 6 frames, making the pivot grab barely reactable if my threat range maneuvering is perfect with no additional space to recover. Distinctly, I'm only reacting to the rising part of his jump, as I cannot reliably react to the nair before shine or spot dodge comes out. Some exceptions could be a preemptive wave dash back grab, which grab is only 7 frames, making it more lenient plus even possible to react to a rising nair. As you see how I utilized Uncle Punch to learn about the situation, I made sure to be as specific as possible if it was relevant. While I know I said in Fundamental Number 1 that it's not always important to learn numbers in absolutely everything, you should try to be specific in regards to reaction points at bare minimum. The same save state system is also how you can test nuance, especially since Uncle Punch has the ability to store multiple save states that you can randomize. For the Marth Ditto example shown from Fundamental Number 5 in regards to nuance, you can easily set the Marth from the same fair timing to do a down tilt afterwards in save state number 1 and do a dash back in save state number 2 to test the nuance. For Punish Flowcharts, Custom Trajectory DI is a frame-tight combo tool that is often cleaner than using the replay feature and more practical than the combo training event. You can queue up multiple SDI or DI strings that are most effective for practicing throw flowcharts. You can set where to combo break with a move or double jump. It is very useful in particular for breaking down optimal/mixup flowcharts with combo launchers like grab, dash attack, up tilt, etc. For edge guards, replay system must be used. It's honestly a bit janky with how you have to set up some edge guards, but it is what it is. Practicing tech skill from Uncle Punch. One way to effectively track on how you solo practice is utilizing Uncle Punch replays, especially if you do not possess sufficient knowledge in how/why you mess up certain tech skill strings. An example of practicing a tech skill to mastery is doing it 20 times while recording. After the tech skill practice, reload the save state and observe how it could be better optimized. Again, if it's 1 frame late, it's actually ideal for consistency. You can precisely see why you may have messed up a tech skill. If you succeed 19 out of 20 times, you have 95% consistency. Obviously, you can modify this number to be whatever you feel is comfortable. Being successful 9 out of 10 times is also great, to whatever you subjectively feel is successful practice and what goals you want to attain. While technically not an in-game fundamental, this is a necessary tool to understand how to optimize all prior fundamentals. Without this tool, improving the prior fundamentals would be significantly harder for non-talented individuals. Conclusion. I know this guide may seem daunting and quite complex, but that's because Melee itself is a deeply complex game. That's why Melee is so sick. In the pursuit of perfecting something deeply complex, you are forcing yourself to become better than before, and I think that's beautiful and worth teaching others who wish to pursue that. If you have any questions about particular segments of the guide, and/or think improvements can be made, DM me on Twitter, @KoDoRiNSSB, or Discord, KoDoRiN. I also provide coaching, where if you struggle interpreting this guide properly, or struggle to apply this with your analysis or games, I'm very happy to guide you through, and your first coaching session is 50% off. You can sign up through my Patreon or DM me for PayPal/Venmo. Last thing to mention is that while this guide is focused on in-game fundamentals to increase your skill, a lot of how you can still be held back from reaching your potential are usually out-of-game factors like your mentality. Learning from my observation and years of playing this game, having a poor mentality for competition is the most common reason why I see people not reaching their potential. And a major resource I've personally used is various meditation practices to get where I currently am and hopefully further. This is a major resource I've personally used to guide my meditation practices. and if you want to get started with guidance, you can contact him saying that KoDoRiN sent you, and he will give you a complimentary 30-minute session to start. Link in the full guide. Potential Q&A. Question 1. This guide is so long and complex. How am I supposed to read and understand this, especially in one setting? Answer. I'd be shocked if anyone was able to completely understand this guide in one day, unless you're a top player. The answer is that you should portion this guide accordingly to what puts you into flow state. You must be honest when it comes to how much you naturally understand Melee. If your skill level isn't very high, take this guide slowly, rather than overwhelming yourself with anxiety. As your skill increases is when you can steadily take on more. If you're already pretty skilled, you can naturally take on more with the guide, rather than taking it one fundamental at a time, or else it would bore you. I'll also tell it to you straight. I could have made this guide a lot more general, and do this in basically every situation just because, and it probably would have been easier to digest, and in some ways, more effective for improvement due to accessibility. However, I'm not interested in teaching shortcuts to improve in Melee, because the game is honestly very complex, and I want to pave the way for people who truly want to become the best they can possibly be to be a little bit more straightforward through understanding fundamentals. That's why the guide is as long and complex as it is. This is also a guide not meant for novice players. If you can't really do basic tech skill as is, I recommend you research basic guides, such as SSBM tutorials beforehand, and watch a few major tournaments that happen on Twitch or YouTube. However, it's not easy to apply everything in this guide. If there are parts of the guide that you do not understand, feel free to DM me and I am happy to clarify. Question 2. How confident are you about this guide? Do you think it truly encompasses everything? Answer. While I don't think this truly encompasses everything, I think this guide covers just about every fundamental required to be good at Melee. What this guide lacks are extreme specifics, of course, and this guide is not meant to cover that. The intent behind this guide is giving you the tools necessary to think about those specific situations for yourself. I truly believe that if you apply the fundamentals properly, every single question you've ever had about Melee will be answered and you can play to your fullest potential. This guide was also critiqued with a couple other top players, alongside Drugged Fox, who inspired me to make this guide. With my expertise and critique from others, I'm confident that the knowledge here is the finest out there. Question 3. How can I best apply this guide alongside my practice? I don't feel like I'm improving, despite listening to this guide. Answer. The primary intent behind this guide is to greatly enhance your VOD analysis takeaways. From the VOD analysis takeaways, you can greatly enhance the direction your solo practice needs to go, and then apply those ideas in friendlies. Even so, it's possible that you won't improve despite doing the suggested system. This is because improvement in Melee is very much like melting an ice cube, where just because you heat up the ice cube doesn't mean that it will immediately melt. However, the ice cube will melt soon, and it very quickly becomes all liquid. Improving in Melee is similar, where just because you learn some concepts, that doesn't mean that you will immediately improve. The improving results, however, will come in time, once the cube melts enough. As for how long that will take, it greatly depends on your aptitude understanding the guide and how much effort you put into improving. So it's a question of how much you really want it and the efficacy of your improvement process. Another reason is possible misinterpretation of the guide. Perhaps you don't do the math properly, which results in improper reaction points, and therefore results in misguided fundamentals. The major drawback of self-learning is that no one will tell you if you do something fundamentally wrong if you don't already possess a high aptitude for learning a particular topic in the first place. My advice is that if you are uncertain, please feel free to reach out to me. Another reason might be the level of play of the opponent you go up against. Slippy and Uncle Punch, alongside 20 plus years of metagame evolution, has seriously increased the overall skill level of an average player. You may very well be fighting against people that have 1,000 times the experience than you do. So it's only natural that despite learning some fundamentals, you still get curb stomped by them. Improving in Melee is very much exponential. My advice is don't pay attention much to the end results, and pay attention to the little details that you've improved upon, such as reacting better and refined flowcharts, even if it all didn't necessarily end up winning you the game. Know that you are one step closer to winning. Lastly, there's honestly really dozens of variables at play as to why you don't improve despite listening to the guide. Maybe you have health issues. Perhaps your controller sucks. Maybe you don't really practice, etc. While I can't possibly dissect every reason you may not be improving, the goal of this guide is to at least have a big picture direction on how you can improve. If you're not improving despite that, introspection is required, and that may even be unique from other possible reasons already listed. Question 4. I find myself freezing up a lot more when trying to apply the guide to my games. I react and end up being significantly slower than before, making me worse. Answer. When learning concepts, naturally you will be a bit worse than before, so the initial slump is actually expected. However, if the initial slump is lasting more than you feel like it should, then it may be because you're overthinking and not quite trusting your intuition. While this guide is very informative, explaining the science behind why a lot of things work with frame data and descriptive analysis, you absolutely should not be thinking in a given match, wow, I have 15 frames to react and my pivot grab comes out frame 9 with 5 frames to close the distance. Yeah, you get the idea. That kind of thinking will only slow you down. In that same scenario, what you really should be thinking is that you simply trust your instinct with how you've seen the situation before and roll with a pivot grab immediately. For similar reasons, you should also avoid trying to learn mid-game, especially a tournament set, as your overall speed and reaction time suffers. Ideally, you've already seen and analyzed these scenarios before, so you just immediately trust your intuition that you've built up and simply perform. To be honest, it's not really required that you know the science behind everything described in the fundamentals, but what is required is understanding how to apply the concepts described here. At the end of the day, Melee tests your intuition of a given stimulus, and unnecessary overthinking will result in worse performance. Question 5. Will this guide be updated? Answer. For the most part, majority of this guide is final. I will likely modify some things here and there, especially as I continue to learn the game, but just about 90% of the guide, if not more, is going to remain the same. If I do get challenged about some aspects of this fundamentals guide, then I could be convinced to modify certain aspects of it. But for the most part, I think it is fundamentally solid.